Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5, Sisterhooves Special, home of the Sisterhooves Social. I do very much enjoy this episode, as it is a very good Rarity and Sweetie Belle episode. Bad friend point is gonna go to Rarity, obviously. She's not really being a bad friend to any of the main six, but she isn't being the greatest sister. And I'm not counting Sweetie Belle or any of the others for this, but even if I was, Sweetie Belle, her intentions are in the right place, so I wouldn't call her a bad friend. She's just got other problems. We'll get into it. Our opening has Rarity peacefully napping in bed before she smells smoke and gallops out of her room, still wearing her blindfold. And of course the source of the smoke is a disgruntled Sweetie Belle who's trying to cook a meal for her sister as a surprise. I don't know about you, but as a child, if I suddenly started causing a lot of smoke and alarms going off, I'd be way more concerned, but Sweetie Belle, and a lot of fictional characters for this trope, never seem to bat an eye at their incompetence. I still can't wrap my head around how to explain Sweetie Belle. I originally called her selfish, but that wasn't quite right, and tried to correct myself in a comment about how she was inconsiderate, but looking back, and right here, most of the time she causes problems is from her trying to be considerate and care for others. So I guess we're falling back onto a lack of attention or awareness to one's surroundings. So oblivious, I guess? That's probably the closest I've been. But I'm overanalyzing too much. We're not even a minute in, so I'll save it for the rest of the episode. And here they are, as was told to me multiple times in, I believe, Season 1, Episode 23, The Cutie Mark Chronicles, Rarity's parents, who I was unsure if they ever appeared. Yet here they are in Sisterhood Social. Now that I see them, I do remember them, but they are so forgettable, and I don't really think they ever show up again. They probably get another cameo, but I don't think they get involved in like a speaking role or anything. We see the dad is a sports enthusiast from his cutie mark, and the mom looks like an older fashioned pony with what I believe is called a beehive hairstyle. What about their personalities? Well, they seem a bit airheaded, but also very supportive, just as unaware of things as Sweetie Belle. Also, Sweetie Belle's tongue is doing that thing where it's gray again, if you remember me pointing that out back in Season 1. How in the ever-loving duck did she get these in the house? Quite enough that no one noticed until she knocked something over. Screw your joke, I need answers. Also, just so we all know I'm not crazy, here is her tongue as the normal pink. It's not like she just has a gray tongue, even though I've pointed it out twice. Rarity, using her honest powers... Wait, that's Applejack. Rarity is borrowing it. She explains that they can't eat anything Sweetie Belle prepared because it was burnt, and then proceeds to start cleaning and preparing another meal. While Sweetie Belle was originally dejected, she asks to help, only for Rarity to pretend to think of something for her to do, while just doing everything herself. The sisters' relationship, as much as Sweetie Belle annoys me, is actually a good conflict. Sweetie Belle just wants to help and be useful to Rarity, as well as just in general. But she's terrible at everything except for singing, while Rarity doesn't really have the time or care to constantly have to pick up and take care of Sweetie Belle's messes. We can understand both perspectives, and neither one is really the bad guy, even if the show tries to say Rarity is, because yes, Rarity doesn't handle it well, and definitely could do better things, but we also perfectly understand her position without it feeling forced. And Rarity's first big misstep of the episode is overpressuring Sweetie Belle while she's trying to help, which induces more clumsiness than there otherwise would be. Sweetie Belle is constantly shown to do bad under pressure, and for a perfectionist like Rarity who holds herself to a higher standard, their personalities tend to clash exactly as intended. It's hard to call it a good chemistry, but that's technically what it is. They play off one another in a sensible way for the conflict. Sweetie Belle's second misstep, with the first being the damage to the kitchen, is doing the laundry. Look, I know that seems good, but give it a sec. Sweetie Belle was given a basket to take to the laundry room, which is fair. If she had just done that basket of laundry, that probably would have been fine. But she takes an item that was hanging up and washes it and then hangs it outside, despite not knowing whether it needed either of those things. Sweetie Belle tends to have assumptions cause a lot of her problems, stemming from her wanting to be useful. She tends to go overboard. The sweater was also one of a kind and was difficult to get. Now, Rarity probably shouldn't have left it hanging around the laundry room for no reason, but she was caught off guard by her parents and Sweetie Belle's arrival, so she probably didn't remember it was there still, or that it would encounter any problems, since she had assumed it would just be her there and she knows what she's doing. Her entire rhythm of the day was kind of thrown out of whack by Sweetie's arrival. Sweetie Belle says the quiet part out loud and how she just wants to help her sister, but keeps getting reprimanded by her. Congratulations, Sweetie Belle, you have learned what the episode is about. Sweetie Belle, while bored out of her mind, remembers that Rarity said to stay out of trouble, and so she goes and takes some crayons and paper lying around and starts drawing, which in this case is 100% on Rarity. The fact that the paper was colored should have drawn Sweetie Belle's attention, but Rarity shouldn't have left out paper right next to crayons. Again, this could have been a problem that Rarity was caught off guard and didn't have time to prep for Sweetie Belle, but whereas the sweater incident was more on Sweetie Belle not paying attention, this one is probably more on Rarity, at least in my brain. Of course, Sweetie Belle shouldn't be touching anything that isn't hers to begin with, but that's a common trait of children, and I can kind of accept it even if I don't like it. Okay, so maybe the crayons and paper were Sweetie Belle's and I'm misunderstanding. She could have brought them from home. But a chest full of giant sapphires is most certainly Rarity's. This is Sweetie Belle's next big misstep, and falls back into what we saw with Season 1 episodes 17 and 18, where Sweetie Belle just takes things from Rarity without asking. Again, the reason Sweetie Belle is going to do this is entirely to show Rarity something that she'll like, or she thinks she'll like, but fails to have any situational awareness as to what she should and shouldn't be doing. And another assumption from Sweetie Belle. She knows Rarity has more gems in her quote-unquote closet, which I assume is something related to her work, not her personal closet, or, probably also her personal closet, but that's why she took and assumed it would be okay to use the gems. We can see that she once again is being reprimanded for using Rarity's these rare blue sapphires that were specifically for a client. Given that Sweetie Belle in season 1 episode 18 directly stated she wanted to do costumes like Rarity, if we assume the least, we can say that she vaguely is aware of Rarity's job and work. But we could also assume she's very familiar with it, as in season 1 episode 17, before they leave for the sleepover, Sweetie Belle knew the exact location of the item Rarity needed, so she probably knows more. But assuming the least, she knows that things like fabric and gemstones are frequently used by Rarity, and touching them could affect her business. This is once again demonstrating why I originally called selfish or inconsiderate behavior, but again, looking at all of her actions as a whole, instead of each incident, it's probably closer to the obliviousness I mentioned beforehand. Okay, no. Those papers, pencils, and crayons were Rarity's, she directly says so. Also, she leaves to go get more gems and asks Sweetie Belle to stop making messes that she needs to clean up. In a normal situation, we'd say Rarity is probably being too harsh, and she probably is even still. But it's also very understandable. She's lost time, money, and some sanity to Sweetie Belle's attempts at helping. While you can look at this situation and say it's endearing how much Sweetie Belle cares, she's not taking the time to learn how to actually be helpful. She could go ask the other CMC, but that wouldn't really be that helpful since Apple Bloom only does farm work and Scootaloo has no siblings. But that would be an in-character option. Another option would be to ask one of Rarity's friends, but obviously that's not as in-character as Sweetie Belle is only really acquainted with Fluttershy and Twilight. However, both of those ponies would be immense help in this situation. But whether it's something the show believes in or not, they want Sweetie Belle to learn without needing to be taught, showing that you don't always need help to grow if you put in the effort and are willing to accept failure and punishments. But it's also good to seek help when needed and not try to accomplish things on your own. Overcoming struggles is great, but also seeking guidance when it's needed is great as well. Okay, I'm gonna call this another misstep for Rarity. She left the door to her workspace open, again, probably from not being used to Sweetie Belle's presence, and also works in a controlled chaos environment, which when seen by others will only naturally make them think it needs a cleaning. Granted, after Sweetie Belle's first 3 failures, you think she wouldn't try anymore, but I suppose it's an admirable trait that she never gives up and always wants to help. Shame it's not working due to her own lack of awareness. So yeah, Sweetie Belle attempted to organize and clean everything, and for once this actually looks like a good job. Unfortunately, you never want to touch a creative space, as it always exists in a state of I know where everything is type of place. If no one touches anything, I will always know where something I left is. But the second someone touches something, I lose track of everything. Not a fun situation to be in. I still think this is mostly Rarity's fault, but Sweetie Belle needs to pay more attention, obviously. She did do a good job though, and if she did this to any other room or space, it probably would have been greatly appreciated. Sweetie Belle does the child thing of, quote, you always yell at me for my messes, end quote, which Rarity rightly points out that this was, quote, her mess, and also, quote, her house. So, you know, she's responsible for it all, which means she's also responsible for Sweetie Belle's messes while she's there, hence why she's upset. Also, having Sweetie Belle clean up after herself is just good parenting. I know she's not her parent, obviously, but it's important to teach that kind of responsibility, or you get those people who leave their restaurant table or movie theater seat in a disgusting mess for someone else to clean up because it's their job. Don't be a dick. So every time Rarity's gonna explode on Sweetie Belle, she manages to calm herself down to a very calm, placid tone. I'm not sure if this is healthy anger management or coping, or extremely toxic to Sweetie Belle by basically giving her the cold shoulder and pushing her away. I'm leaning towards the latter, but it might just be both. It's good that she's not exploding at a child, but smothering her emotions and speaking to Sweetie Belle like she's a stranger probably isn't a good thing. I'll consider this another misstep for Rarity. Sweetie Belle finally leaves the house to roam around town and runs into Apple Bloom to give us the rest of the episode's plot. That's right, we're finally getting to the actual Sisterhooves social as a concept. Well, the explanation is pretty self-explanatory. You compete with your sister against other sisters in a bunch of events, which are usually the standard events of like potato sack race, 3-hoofed race, obstacle course race, holding egg race, a lot of racing events, huh? Well, Sweetie Belle loves the idea, so I'm sure Rarity will too. Have you learned nothing? Obviously, Rarity has been dialed to 11. She hears about the event and calls it ridiculous and not very clean. This is how she should have been portrayed in season 1 episode 8, rather than just being correct versus Applejack. Show her as obsessively clean, not just basic manners clean. I might try to put a clip in after the fact, but the rapid changing of emotions in Sweetie Belle here before she blows up and denounces Rarity as her sister is immaculate animation, and could lead to some fun screen caps. But yeah, Rarity doesn't want to get dirty and play games, and basically talks down to Sweetie Belle, so Sweetie Belle has had enough, and unlike Rarity, actually explodes instead of controlling it. Adorable. She can't even be mad without looking like a cutie patootie. But yeah, Rarity is the big dumb and makes another misstep, claiming she would be better off without a sister who ruins her life. One of the nastiest arguments we've had so far. Big L on Rarity's part. So Sweetie Belle leaves to go complain to Applejack, who also gets upset at Rarity, mostly for calling the Sisterhooves social uncouth, which maybe not the right thing to be upset about, but whatever gets her there, I suppose. Also, they somehow messed up Big Mac's cutie mark. It has Twilight's sparkles around it, which makes me think they literally put Twilight's mark on Big Mac for some reason, and then layered his apple on top of it. I have no idea how this could have happened. Applejack is finally becoming a proper character instead of whatever the hell she was in season 1. She does what Rarity should have done in the first place and asks Sweetie Belle for help with something, and then guide her on how to do it instead of criticizing or complaining about the results. Even after Sweetie Belle claims she messes everything up, which, I mean, we see is correct most of the time, Applejack hits her with the simple yet impactful, that's stinkin' thinking. Or in other terms, thinking you can't succeed is the first step to failure. If you always think you can't do something, you'll never be able to do it. Depends on the thing, obviously, but for the most part, you get it. After showing Sweetie Belle that even picking up bruised apples can be turned into a game, Sweetie Belle starts to get the idea of how a quote-unquote ideal sister acts, supporting and encouraging one another. Granted, we'll see Apple Bloom and Applejack at each other's throats later in the series, but for now, seeing them as what Sweetie Belle would consider an ideal to strive for. Rarity, after complaining more about Sweetie Belle, then notices how neat and well put together everything is, and gets a new idea for a fashion line, and easily uses the items at her disposal to work even faster than before, which makes her realize that Sweetie Belle actually did help her, and her rigid thinking and fussy attitude made her push her away, realizing she overstepped her bounds quite a bit. However, Rarity is quite stubborn, sort of like Applejack, and feels she's in the right because Sweetie Belle shouldn't have touched her stuff without permission, which is a fair stance to take, as she is correct. But she's burying the good under the bad, which isn't exactly a healthy way to look at things. Sweetie Belle does need to learn not to take things or move things that don't belong to her without permission, while Rarity needs to exercise more patience in making sure Sweetie Belle understands. If Rarity didn't lose her time and money to Sweetie Belle's antics, I'd 100% be on Sweetie Belle's side here, which is good on the show for constructing this conflict. Sweetie Belle sees Apple Bloom mess up Applejack and think Applejack would be upset, instead seeing some playful roughhousing. She again thinks that this was the ideal she wants. She's not really thinking about how to get along with Rarity, she's thinking how can I make Rarity like Applejack, or how can I spend more time with Applejack. Either way, it's not going to help her in the long term. Once again, Rarity finds the remains of one of Sweetie Belle's mess-ups and turns it into an opportunity to make Opal look adorable. Let me be clear that despite Rarity's ability to turn all of this into a more positive spin, they were still mistakes by Sweetie Belle, and doesn't justify her actions at all, even though the show is gonna kinda treat it like it does. And again, Sweetie Belle sees the apples working together on the chores they do regularly and thinks it's cool how in sync they are. The sheep then reveal they're sentient and can talk just like ponies, which makes this corralling kind of horrifying, specifically stating they could have just asked them to head back. It's really confusing which animals can and can't talk on the show. All of Fluttershy's animals can't, but some of Applejack's can. So far we have sheep and cows that can, but pigs and chicken that can't. Finally, Rarity sees the art project Sweetie Belle had made using her gems after searching for it to take the gems back since she needed them. This is the nail in the coffin that makes Rarity sob wanting to get Sweetie Belle back. Again, Sweetie Belle's actions were wrong, but her intentions were always right. Also, the gems are 2D now for some reason, despite being 3D beforehand. That's weird. Rarity performs a Shakespearean monologue while no one is around about how she's going to never be sisterless again. Okay. Rarity arrives at night after searching for Sweetie Belle. Before she can really say or do anything though, Sweetie Belle just gives her the cold shoulder, similar to how Rarity cut things off last time. Fitting, if not sad. This is learned behavior in action, folks. Rarity apologizes and Sweetie Belle seemingly agrees that she can't live without a sister. However, Sweetie Belle quickly demonstrates that she means she wants Applejack as a sister instead. She sees Applejack as actually caring up for Apple Bloom, while Rarity didn't seem to care for her. So now the fillies are arguing over Applejack. Applejack flounders and is embarrassed for Rarity, and Rarity is upset and also sad at Sweetie Belle's claims that she doesn't love her. Sweetie Belle once again pulls a mostly correct response out, quote, "You want me to go home with you so we can do what you want to do," end quote, which is a fair response because Sweetie Belle has already explained a bunch of options for them to do together, even outside of the Sisterhooves social, and not all of them are dirty. She even asked Rarity to sing with her earlier, but instead Rarity tries to coerce Sweetie Belle into either cooking Rarity's favorite meal or styling her mane, which were not on the things listed by Sweetie Belle. So Sweetie Belle's response is a proper one. She gave out options that Rarity could take from, but Rarity chose nothing, and now instead of offering to do any of those things, she focuses on her own interests. Granted, the way Sweetie Belle worded it, it sounded more selfish, making it seem like Sweetie Belle only wants to do the things she wants to do, but the context here does wonders. Sweetie Belle is justifiably angry that after all of her attempts to hang out failed, now Rarity is being perceivably selfish and trying to get her to do what she wants. Even if you don't think it's selfish, it's still an understandable response. Applejack gives what is just relationship advice instead of sister advice and tells Rarity that being sisters is a give and take relationship and she's only been doing the taking, which if I'm being honest, she hasn't even been taking, she's just been stonewalling and not engaging. Regardless, Applejack's advice is good and is more for any type of relationship rather than specifically a sister one, which is good, don't get me wrong. It's good to give advice that's useful in every situation. This isn't really a criticism, even though I might have worded it like that. Rarity didn't quite get it and thinks her telling Sweetie Belle that she effed up counts as giving, only for Applejack to give an apple analogy, shocker. Quote, "Even with amazing apples and a fantastic crust, an apple pie will only be good with both." Just further trying to drill it into Rarity's thick, yet as she would say, fabulous skull. The Sisterhooves social is being hosted by the apples, yet Applejack and Apple Bloom aren't the first to arrive. And Granny Smith and Big Mac are also not shown here, but they will be later, but that's still weird. Also, Rarity has a plan, which we will get to later. Here we see Berry Punch and Amethyst Star, who we can presume are here with their sisters. I think these fillies have been used as background ponies a few times. Not sure if they were ever used with these two, but if I had to guess, the best place to look would be either Nightmare Night or Season 1, Episode 12 at the Cute Seniera. I'm not gonna go look, I'm way too lazy for that, but you can look if you want. Similarly, we have Golden Harvest with presumably her sister. Second verse, same as the first. You can go check if you feel like it. All Sweetie Belle is doing is complaining about how Rarity would react to all of this instead of trying to have fun, with Apple Bloom and Applejack getting mildly annoyed at her. Applejack and Apple Bloom let Sweetie Belle do the obstacle race with Applejack to let her enjoy the event. I'm sure there are no ulterior motives here. Derpy 42, Bonbon 50, and we finally found Big Mac and Granny Smith. The grounds of the event also seem just bigger in general now. Lyra 44. She wasn't in the previous shot, and now Bonbon is missing. Dagnabbit. Not the largest turnout for an event. They couldn't put a few more backgrounders in the stands. I mean, at least there aren't a lot of copy and paste, so I guess that's something. That being said, the ponies on this bench appear to be reskins of the ponies on the other bench. Apple Bloom has a scarf, despite the fact that she gave hers to Sweetie Belle, and we can see the scarves are color coordinated, so where'd they get a third one? She also wasn't wearing it in the previous scene where I counted Lyra, so you can check there. Applejack suddenly falls into the mud and gets completely covered. But hey, at least she has her hat as an identifier. Wait. Aren't Applejack's eyes green? Sweetie Belle, you son of a... Wow, one bite. That's impressive. Applejack. And it's genuinely impressive for Sweetie Belle. That pie was as big as her head. Oh my god. Oh sure, now they copy and paste to fill the seats. And no, I'm not counting any more bonbons, Lyras, and derpies because we know they're at the event. They filled the jar to the top with grape juice. Now it's less than half empty. We can assume with the jump cut she spilt a bunch because she was running while carrying it on her head, I guess. Sure. Barry and her sister were each carrying an egg, but Applejack and Sweetie Belle are carrying one egg together. So did they need one egg or two? Well, regardless, it didn't seem to matter since Barry and her little sister just blazed past Applejack and Sweetie Belle anyway. Applejack's a unicorn? Oh, right, Rarity's plan. Somehow she shakes all the mud off no problem despite leaving it on the entire event. Some of that should definitely have crusted on, especially on fur. Or wait, don't horses have hair? I know it's called a coat, but I don't remember if it's closer to fur or hair. I think it's hair. Even the show sometimes calls it hair, so that's probably what it was. So Applejack's fallen into the mud puddle so that she and Rarity could swap places. The eye color is an amazing detail, as well as the fact that Rarity doesn't speak the entire race. She just nods and smiles, despite the fact that Applejack is anything but quiet. So the hints were all there, and it was a really well done twist, even though it was kind of an obvious twist because we knew Rarity had to, somehow make it up to her sister. Rarity exclaims that they need to celebrate, and when asked where, she says the spa, which gives everyone the jollies, except for Rarity, who is serious. She was covered in mud. I mean, come on. And it's not like the fancy good mud. The sisters invite Spike over to write their letter to Celestia, while also showing that they're bonding now and doing the hairstyle thing like Rarity suggested, but instead of doing it the proper way, she does it in a fun, goofy way for Sweetie Belle. As for the letter, it is thus: having a sister is great, but it's hard. You have to have teamwork, you have to compromise, and you have to accept your differences. But most importantly, it's about having fun together, even if you have to get your hooves dirty, which is all stuff we've heard before from other episodes, but with different contexts, so again, no real notes. Sweetie Belle ruined the kitchen again, but the food actually came out not burnt, so Rarity is more impressed, and so am I. She turned toast into a liquid, but somehow baked a pie. Pies are hard to bake, man. And some cute symbolic birds to close out the episode. To the outro. And that was the Sisterhooves special, which I always call the Sisterhooves social because that's the more important part of the episode. I always enjoy this episode. It's just a nice character-driven story between the two sisters, and even though I never used to like Sweetie Belle, I still liked this episode because it was really well written and the conflict, as I said, was pretty sound. As for the actual rating of the episode, I think I'm going to give it a 7. No one acts out of character. Everyone's pretty good and well written. The conflict is good. Everything's really nice. None of the emotions are really strong enough. No. Sweetie Belle has a lot of that good stuff going. So you know what? I'll actually give this one an 8. Screw it. Yeah. Sisterhooves special gets an 8. It's a really solid one. See you later.